Welcome to the Beyond Physio podcast, where we help you move, excel, and inspire others on your journey to your next level with knowledge and advice from experts and testimonials from our like-minded community.
Rick, thank you so much for coming on a Friday, and I'm really happy to have this discussion with you about your next level experience. We've been through a lot together, I feel like.
Definitely.
I feel like I've definitely been sort of shoulder to shoulder with you in this journey to get you back into running, and you had a successful race, so we're going to dive into that.
Okay.
But Rick, tell us about kind of your favorite activities that you do.
So I'm a former athlete, I guess still an athlete.
Always that.
Play sand volleyball, play tennis, run, do some trail running. I am a part of a group called F3, Fitness, Faith, and Fellowship, just morning boot camps and morning run clubs, and just try to really be exercise on a daily basis.
Yeah. And Rick, one of the things I loved about you is that you also had this history with playing competitive volleyball back in the day in California, which is where my heart and soul live still. But you also had an ACL tear back in the day, right?
Yeah, so this is probably freshman year of college, 1997, 98.
Makes you like, what, 29?
Yeah, very young. Driving baseline in a pickup basketball game and just got a hip check and just fell to the ground and tore my ACL and had ACL reconstructive surgery in spring 1998.
Oh my gosh.
A long time ago. It was a painful recovery, but, went through the rehab and just tried to get back on the court and play sports and be active as much as possible.
That's
after
great.
That injury.
Now, fast forward after high school, college, and leaving the great state of California, although it's not so great right now, unfortunately. But tell us about how you got into F3 and what being an F3 actually got you to do that you weren't already doing for your fitness life.
Yeah, I think throughout my life, I was never much of a distance runner or a runner itself, right? I really enjoyed competitive sports.
Yeah.
I'm getting my exercise through the competition, baseball, basketball, tennis, volleyball. But, as you get older in life, you have other responsibilities like a job, family, kids, being a father and a husband, and you just kind of lose that bandwidth of how you can exercise and how you can participate in those competitive sports.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really looking for an outlet to, gain an opportunity to fellowship with other men.
Yeah.
Really continue to work on just trying to be healthy, right? When you have kids and you have a young family, you want to be in the best shape as possible.
Yeah.
And I think F3 and getting up in the mornings and having that accountability from other men was something I really needed and what I was really looking for. And, through that process, I was only going 1 or 2 days a week. Just some standard boot camps, a lot of push-ups, a lot of running and burpees. Yeah. But as I continued to participate in F3, I just kind of started running more and got pushed from my fellow man. And next thing you know, I'm running 6 miles, running 10 miles, trying trail races, trying relay races like the Blue Ridge Relay.
Oh, yeah.
And really trying to, just kind of push myself. And so I started running more. And again, I was never a distance runner. I never really enjoyed running. I mean, back when I was a kid, I played a lot of soccer, and I intentionally wanted to be a goalie because I knew I didn't have to run so much. And so I loved soccer, and I was a great goalie, but I didn't have to run, and it was great. But through F3 and just over my adult years here, I just got into a little more running. And I'm not the fastest, just so you know.
Fast doesn't matter. I feel like as we get older, we're both, I think, still competitive at heart in different ways, but I feel like my competition has changed in the sense that I want to push myself as hard as I can, but I also respect that I'm also 30 years older than I was in college. And so I have to make certain adjustments there. Yeah. But being a part of F3, I think has been awesome because I think with that like-minded group that you have these guys who are all pushing each other in the right direction on many different domains, which I really appreciate about the group. Now, tell us about, you were recently preparing for this longer race because you got into ultra running recently. Mm-hmm. And tell us about that process and how you got to where you found us.
Yeah. So just the last couple of years, dove into trail racing and, running at Umstead here in Cary, doing some smaller races, but trying to, again, push yourself and kind of have that FOMO, right? If a friend of yours or somebody in F3 is doing a race, you don't want to miss out on that fun and that training together. And so 3 years ago, I signed up for like the 8-mile URI trail race. And that was a great experience. It was very hard. I was like, oh man, this is
very technical, tough. I think, right?
Yeah, it's very technical. And it was just challenging. I'd never done something like that before.
Yeah.
And so then the following year, this is last year, I decided to run the 20-mile race, a 20-mile option for that race in the URI.
Nice.
So last year I ran the 20-miler. And again, one of the harder things I've ever done. And I told myself I wasn't going to do it again. But right in the fall comes and you're like, all right, I'm going to sign up again.
Yeah.
So this will be my third time running the race, signed up for the 20 miler again, which is great. I was excited, enthusiastic about it, looking forward to the training. And so I did run that race a few weeks ago, beginning of February, 25.
Awesome. So now let's backtrack a little bit, because the reason why you're here, along the way towards training for UARI over the summertime, some things happened to you physically. Can you just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so probably in the spring, maybe like April, May of 24, just really started noticing some foot pain. Didn't think it was anything major. Sometimes us men, we don't like to admit when you're injured or get the special treatment right away. So just kind of ignored it and just kind of kept running and doing nothing crazy, maybe 25 to 30 miles a week. Just running.
Yeah.
And just kind of pushing through the pain, and did some icing on my own and some stretching on my own, but really didn't think anything of it. But probably like July and August, it started to hurt a little bit more. And then I was actually doing a kettlebell workout in August, I think.
Yeah.
Doing some kettlebell swings, and I tweaked my back. And at that point, it was a feeling I've never really felt when it came to a back tweak.
Yes.
And so the next day, my hip started hurting, my knee started hurting, and my foot in that area was hurting even more. It's like, oh man, what is going on?
Crazy.
Just like the whole thing. Yeah.
So now that happened, and you never had anything like this before. And for our audience, when Rick came in with these issues, you would think that they were a cumulative kind of thing, because it rarely happens where one sort of one injury sets off a chain reaction within such a short period of time. And I initially thought it might have been a herniated disc, which we do see a lot of. But when I tested him and examined him during our evaluation, he was not showing any of those signs. He had a true musculoskeletal issue going on. And in Rick's case, you okay with them sharing?
Yeah, definitely.
He had an 100%. SI joint issue going on. Then we had the knee issue, I think, was actually in the joint itself, where he wasn't able to rotate his foot very well, which we fixed over time. And I think the hip was just a symptom of not being able to move around as much and him continuing activity because he was still training for the race.
Yeah. And I do think that, and I don't even know if we talked about this, but I do think that in 2024, I was doing less stretching than I had done in some previous years.
Yeah.
And I kind of knew that.
Yeah.
And so I think that tight, felt like everything was so tight.
Yes.
My hamstrings were tight all the time. My calves were tight.
Yeah.
My foot was sore. Just again, thinking nothing of it. I'll stretch tomorrow. And I didn't. And I just kind of got out of that routine from previous years. And then it's just really exacerbated in those injuries.
It's funny you talk about stretching. And I always tell people that if stretching gave everyone a six-pack, we'd all be stretching. That's for sure. But the other thing about stretching is that sometimes when we have tight muscles, it's actually more often than not, it's because we're either overdoing something and we haven't given enough time to recover, or that we are substituting for somewhere else that may need more mobility, for example, or maybe
compensating.
Exactly. Thank you. Compensating for an area that may need more mobility, or maybe it's not very strong. So that's often when I say, well, if he's always feeling tight, there must be something that's not being quote unquote fed. And that's why it's always feeling tight. So weak and tight, is one of the things that we see a lot of when patients come in with this. But moving on from there, so you and I met, and I was like, this is the guy with the man bun. And tell us about your experience at Next Level.
Yeah, I think I was a little nervous at first, just because, honestly, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to afford the cost and afford the time, and how would this look, and would I have the patience to kind of see through treatments and exercises and strength training to get where I needed to go. But, like I told you this first day, my ultimate goal was to still run this race.
Yes.
This was beginning of September when we met, and then the race was in February.
Yeah.
So let's see what we can do.
Yeah.
And immediately, you diagnose those kind of painful areas in my back, my knee. And they actually dissipated fairly quickly, about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Back pain was gone in a couple days.
Yep.
The knee pain was gone once we did some, whatever you do, tweaks and some knee tweaks,
Mobilization. Yes.
Yeah. Mobilization
Yeah.
activities. And then it was really just my foot pain that just really kept lingering. And even throughout that process of kind of coming in once a week, twice a week, and to get the treatment, I tried to be as diligent as possible to do those exercises on my own in my house. And I actually remember that I tweaked my groin stretching.
Yeah.
I was doing a stretch that you said I should do, and I was going, listen to the doctor. And I texted you the next day. I was like, I think I hurt my groin stretching. But then
sorry for the bad advice.
Yeah, we fixed that in about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just felt like it was, if I was going to get ready for the race, but if I was going to spend the money and spend the time that I
Yeah.
needed to be diligent and patient at the same time.
Definitely. And I think I gave you credit many times during your ordeal here where you definitely were one of the few guys that really stuck to the program. And I think that's why you got results very quickly, especially with that back, hip and knee issue, and then the adductor issue there. But that foot definitely took a little more time than we expected. I think number one, because it was there so much longer than the other issues. And number two, because we had discovered that the mobility in your ankle and also the mobility in your shin bone really needed a lot of work. And it took us a little bit more time than we expected to get that to resolve finally.
Yeah. And I would say the pain, minimized over the weeks.
Yes,
right?
for sure.
It didn't disappear, but I think that, like you said, it was such a big area, or it was such an elongated length of time for that pain was happening that it just took a little more time. And I was encouraged throughout the process because I could feel on a day-to-day basis there was improvement.
Yes.
And I was able to physically feel that improvement.
Absolutely, yeah.
Which, again, it gave me some encouragement. I'm like, I got to do these exercises my own. I got to do these stretches at night. I need to make sure I make my appointment for the following week and really try as best as possible to, I'm a rule follower, so I tried as best as possible to follow the plan.
Yeah.
And I do think it worked.
That's excellent. Now, Rick, tell us about the types of treatment that we used for you where we used shockwave, we used the performance dry needling with electricity, and we also did BFR as our regenerative physio program. Tell us about how that felt for you and how it affected you.
Yeah, I was looking forward to it every time I would come because I feel like I have a high pain tolerance and I was, crank it up. It feels great. And I know that I could feel and tell that the treatment was working and I was feeling improvements. And so I was like, let's just keep doing it because, I was seeing the results. Yeah. And I enjoy it.
You like that?
I thought about the needling and, I thought it was very helpful. And I think that the combination of each of those treatments really had an effect.
Yeah, fully.
But again, toward the end here, when you stopped doing that, I was like, can I have that? Can I get that again?
It's awesome. And the good thing is that you were doing so much better over time, which is great. Which of the three was your favorite? BFR?
Yeah, no, that's my least favorite. No,
that is everyone's least favorite.
Yeah, I think the shockwave is
definitely,
probably the best.
It's funny. I recently had to do it on myself for an IT band issue I was having, and I hadn't had to do it in a long time, so I forgot how it felt. And I was like, "Oh my god, this hurts!" It took me by surprise. But so sorry for putting you through that pain, but it sounds like you like that kind of pain.
Oh yeah, that's great. That's perfect.
Now, when we took a look at you, we also found that, and this is one thing that unfortunately, a lot of physical therapists don't do because we see a lot of patients who are running and have been to PTs for that, but for one reason or another, I'm not really sure why, nobody seems to take the time to look at someone's running gait. And we found, I think day one, that you definitely had some deviations that had to be corrected, including the way you were landing and how far your foot was going out. And I think that also probably helped contribute to your return to running even more effectively.
Yeah, I think that was a huge discovery from you and a realization for me where, again, like I said, I wasn't much of a runner.
Yeah.
Never paid much attention to running gait or proper form.
Yeah.
And so when you had kind of showed me what I was doing on my feet and when I was landing and how I was running, being able to adjust, definitely think it contributed. Even now, when I run, I'm still constantly thinking about how I'm landing, how my foot is being placed, how my chest and my hips are aligned where it needs to be. And so I think, again, you're a genius. So I'm a rule follower. If you tell me to do something, I'm gonna try to do it. And
absolutely,
especially when you see results.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, Rick. Not the compliment. Thank you very much for that. But the real compliment is that when clients come in, it's definitely a therapeutic alliance. It is a partnership between the physical therapist and the client, where we can only recommend the best stuff, but if it's not being done, then the effectiveness of what we say or tell you to do is not going to be helpful at all. And thankfully, because of the clients that we see who are people, runners, hybrid athletes over 30 who want to stay in doing this for a long time. And because of that, and because, they pay for our services, they want to make sure they're getting as much out of these activities and things that we say as possible. And so I found that the compliance has gone up through the roof in general. Yeah. And people like yourself, I think that's what makes this such an effective way of doing things, where you are doing what we know is going to best help you. And because of that, we both win at this because our advice helped and you doing the activity helped you get to where you want to be.
Yeah, but I think it's also the proactive measures in the future, right? Like you said, I'm not a spring chicken like I used to be,
No
even though
way.
I might look that way, right? I want to be able to play volleyball
Yeah.
the next 10, 15, 20 years. I want to be able to, run around with my kids. I want to continue to do races and be active as much as possible without injuring myself and then kind of getting deflated and stop exercising. Like that's a big thing. And I think when you see those successes and you see the program work, it gives you, individually, it gives you that encouragement. Like, okay, I can see myself being healthier. I can see myself continuing to be active.
Definitely. And Rick, for someone like you, I know like for me, for example, exercise is how I keep my mental sanity. It's how I deal with stress. It's how I just feel good about things in life. I think overall my perspective changes when I'm running or lifting or doing something active. For you, what does that do for you physically or mentally, emotionally when you exercise?
I think it's the same thing. It's a stress reliever. I think it's more, you see it more when you're not doing those things, right?
Yeah.
Like those 4 or 5 months where I wasn't being as active as I wanted, coming here on a weekly basis, I'd get discouraged at time. I was frustrated that I couldn't run the distances that I wanted, or I couldn't exercise how I wanted because I was injured. And it takes a toll mentally, but when you see those incremental improvements, that gives you that encouragement to, continue to push through and continue to have that balance in your life, right? Because we all have responsibilities. We all have, lives that other people are seeking your attention, whether it's kids or community or family or, work colleagues. You have to be in a balanced mental state to be able to kind of manage that as a man, and being active really helps regulate feeling.
Definitely.
At least for me.
And I 100% agree. And I would say that one of the things that you mentioned that I wanted to touch on is that, and this is for our audience too, the name of the game in staying physically active for the long haul, hopefully into our 50s, 60s, and beyond, God willing, is to stay ahead of injuries. And I know a lot of us tend to wait till things get worse before we get them addressed. But I'm hoping that by listening to this episode in particular, that you might take a different perspective on this, especially if you happen to be the kind of person who does have those cranky knees, hips, ankles, back, and you keep getting the same kinds of injuries over and over again. Maybe now is a time where you need to consider doing something different about it. And it's taking charge of your health, taking ownership of your injuries in that way, and making sure that you do the right things that you can do so that you can not only get better, but so that you can keep doing this for the next 20, 30, 40 years would be my biggest advice. So, Rick, tell me about, as far as like, now that you're back into running, you had a great race at UARI, which is great. Tell us what you're looking forward to the rest of the year as far as now that you are able to run, has that changed your race schedule for the year?
I'm trying to slowly ramp up, right? I think that this past month, I've tried to take it easy, really try to recover from that long race. But just this past week, I've started to ramp up my mileage and, waking up pain-free every day. It's like,
Awesome.
all right, let's get out. And,
Yeah.
I've done a couple kettlebell workouts this week. I've done some long runs. I'm going to do a long run tomorrow.
Yeah.
Long meaning like 6 miles, which is long for me.
Yeah.
But I did commit to a Blue Ridge relay team. So I'll be running that in early September.
Very nice.
So I'm feeling like now's the time to kind of ramp up a little bit, but I'm also really kind of being cognizant to not re-injure myself.
Yeah.
Summertime is also volleyball season for the Sand League, so I want to make sure I'm kind of healthy for that as well.
Yeah, that's great.
So I need to see you for my shoulder.
That's great. That's great. We're going to be here for a while. So
yeah, but I think that the Blue Ridge Relay is a race that I'm committed to and planned for early September. But other than that, it's going to be, weekly mileage goals, maybe 25, 30. So that's the plan for right now.
That's awesome. Rick, now you've met many of our staff. You met Dr. Megan, you've met Brooke, you met David and Karen. Who do you like the best? No, I'm just kidding. What has it been like working with our staff too?
Yeah, I think everyone is very friendly. Everyone is very quick to communicate. Like if there's a question or a text or a phone call, they're very accommodating to kind of schedule changes. I think I work with probably Brooke the most. Yeah. I think she has high expectations when it comes to completing the exercises.
Yes.
Even when I want to lower the weight, even though I don't want to maybe finish all the reps.
She call you out?
Yeah, she calls me out. She holds me accountable.
Nice.
And I'm cursing her in my head at the moment, but at the end of a session, I'm thankful for that accountability and just really that push, because again, you're only gonna get out of this what you put in. Yeah. And she's an expert, you're an expert, so I'm gonna listen to you all as experts.
I love that. Was there anything that surprised you during your rehab process that you didn't expect from physical therapy? Because you never had physical therapy before.
No, I think what surprised me the most was, well, first I'll say what was most helpful was the shared Excel document
Oh, yeah.
that you and Brooke would put together for me with pictures of proper stances and motions and repetitions. So
Yeah.
I would reference that at home. And I think that having that document was super important.
Yeah.
It wasn't me making these things up on my own, how I could get better, or you telling me, oh, just go to YouTube, look for something. It was a demonstration here. It was a picture of me with a description of what we had done and what I needed to follow on my own. And so having that I felt like that was the biggest surprise of having that detailed plan. I was just able to access anywhere. And there were times that I was doing it in my garage and I didn't have my computer. So, but I was able to pull up on my phone. Like, okay,
nice.
This is what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing. So I think that was a surprise, but also a major benefit.
That's awesome. As far as maybe 3 words that describe our team here or the experience of Next Level, what would you say those 3 words would be?
That's a surprise question.
You can take your time.
I would say high expectations, right? I mean,
I like that.
Whether it is, the exercises, the weights you're using, how long you have to be on the bike, many times you have to run around this building to, to get that running motion, or, the treatment, the high expectations that you guys provide, that you hold your patients to. Can I use that as 2 words? I'll use it as 1.
Right.
I would say fun. Like it's a fun atmosphere. There's lots of laughs. I've been in here many a times with other F3 guys that are also rehabbing from injuries. So it turns into a little comedy hour when you get to rehab and exercise with some friends. So you guys create an environment of that camaraderie, which is awesome. Yeah, and I think beautiful. I mean, this is a great space. You have great weights. You have great inspirational quotes on the wall. And I think that it feels good coming in here because it's always clean. It's always well kept and well lit. And it's a very clean and beautiful space.
Thank you so much. Wow. I was actually surprised. You're the first person who mentioned the cleanliness of our space. Yeah. So for any people out there who have been to dirty PT places, or if you've been with PTs who aren't that fun and PTs who don't know anything about what to do for runners or for people who actually work out. And if you're in the Cary or Raleigh area, we're happy to help you out. But Rick, I just want to thank you so much for sharing your insights to the Next Level experience. And I'm looking forward to running with you on the trail soon. And being part of your journey through the Blue Ridge Relays coming up as well.
Yeah, and I hope I don't have to see you as much as I've been seeing you. But like I said, there might be some shoulder injuries from volleyball and tennis season that I might have to come see you for. But I appreciate everything that you've done to get me back 100%. And I feel like my demeanor is much better these recent weeks, being able to get back running around and being healthy.
Definitely. And it's been a great part of being a part of your journey and also crossing the finish line with you successfully. I'm glad you had a safe race and had a really good race overall. So thanks again.
Thanks so much for tuning into today's episode. It really does mean a lot to us. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, or comment if you got at least 1 or 2 helpful insights or takeaways to help you get to your next level.